Searches at the office of the President of Ukraine. How did Andriy Yermak respond? About Orbán's visit to Putin and the deadly fire in a Hong Kong residential complex. These and other topics today on TSN Online. I'm Valeria Kovalinska. Welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. We're bringing you the news update. Let's get started. The Midas case searches have reached Andriy Yermak. NABU and SAP are conducting investigative actions at the head of the office of the President of Ukraine. Details are promised to be announced later. According to MP Oleksiy Honcharenko, a notice of suspicion is being prepared for Andriy Yermak. Meanwhile, journalists from Ukrainska Pravda managed to film about 10 NABU and SAP employees entering the government quarter early in the morning. Andriy Yermak himself confirmed on his Telegram channel that procedural actions are being carried out at his home. NABU and SAP announced the large-scale Midas operation at the beginning of November. It concerns the embezzlement of funds in the energy sector. According to the investigation, the participants in the scheme managed to launder $100 million. The investigation lasted 15 months. NABU released recordings of conversations between the suspects using code names. Well-known businessmen Timur Mindich are suspected of being involved in the case. Alexander Zuckerman. They have been declared wanted. Mindich managed to leave the territory of Ukraine a few hours before the searches. Zuckerman left back in October. A nighttime enemy attack. The Russians attacked with an Iskander-M ballistic missile and launched 72 strike drones, Shaheds, Gerans, and other types of drones. They were flying in from the direction of Oryol, Bryansk, Milerovo, and from temporarily occupied Crimea. Our air defenders destroyed and neutralized 63 enemy UAVs. The attack was repelled in the north, south, and east of the country. However, there were also hits from a ballistic missile and 9 drones at 5 locations. At another location, debris was recorded falling. An elderly man was killed in the Vovchansk community of Kharkiv region due to a combat drone strike. It hit a civilian car. And in Dnipropetrovsk region, a man was killed and 2 women were wounded as a result of Russian shelling. After a car-based strike on the Sinelnikovo district, a house was destroyed. 2 more were damaged as a result of the drone attack. In Slovyansk Donetsk region, the enemy struck the private sector, injuring a local resident. 6 houses, an administrative building, and cars were damaged. There is also a wounded person in Kostiantynivka. In Druzhkivka, the Russians damaged about a dozen private houses and broke a gas pipeline. 13 people were also injured in the Kherson region. The Russians directed drones at homes in Komyshany, Pryozernoye, and Kherson. 2 women and 3 men were injured. 3 more civilians were injured as a result of artillery shelling of the regional center. Among them was an 18-year-old young man. Medical assistance was also needed for 5 residents of Berislav, Bilozerka, Chornobaivka, and Vlahovishchenske. The enemy carried out nearly 500 strikes on 20 settlements in Zaporizhzhia. No people were injured, but outbuildings, houses, and equipment were damaged. Fierce fighting is taking place in Pokrovsk. Ukrainian soldiers are clearing the northern outskirts of the city of enemy saboteurs. Special operations forces have shown how they set up ambushes along the routes used by the Russians. The enemy tried to take up positions in one of the apartment buildings, but 3 Russians were eliminated as they approached the shelter. A 4th tried to escape and shoot down the Ukrainian reconnaissance drone with small arms. However, the occupier was found and eliminated. Our successes in the northern part of Pokrovsk have halted the enemy's advance toward Hryvnia. However, the Russians continue to tighten the encirclement of Mirnorod. There have already been recorded attempts by isolated enemy groups to infiltrate the city. So far, these attempts have been unsuccessful. The situation around Huliaipol, which the enemy is also trying to occupy, has also been stabilized. Vovchansk is holding on as well. The Russians have repeatedly reported capturing the city. After a year and a half of relentless attacks, Russian terrorists have turned the city into ruins. No factories, no hospitals, no apartment buildings. The fighters of the 57th Brigade and adjacent units continue to hold their positions. In total, 247 combat incidents were recorded over the past day. Clashes. Despite the difficult situation at the front, our defenders managed to neutralize 1,100 Russian terrorists over the past day. Our air defense forces managed to shoot down 63 drones. In total, over the previous 1,373 days, the defense forces have eliminated more than 1,170,000 occupiers, over 23,500 armored vehicles, and 11,380 tanks. 1,550 multiple launch rocket systems and 1,253 air defense assets. The occupiers' air fleet has been reduced by 430 airplanes, 2 of which were turned into scrap just the other day, and 347 helicopters, while their naval fleet has lost 28 ships and boats, as well as 1 submarine. Evacuation under fire. In the Polohi district of Zaporizhzhia, community officers evacuated a married couple, a 57-year-old man and a 64-year-old woman. According to them, the last few days have been turned into hell by the Russians. The shelling has intensified, the village itself is practically destroyed, so they decided to leave. Police officers also evacuated 2 more large families from Yurkovka. One family has 6 children, the other has 3. The families were brought to a transit hub, where they were met by social services and volunteers. Viktor Orbán flew to visit Putin. The Hungarian Prime Minister is going to Russia to discuss energy issues and peacekeeping efforts in Ukraine. This is not the first such meeting since the start of the full-scale invasion, but this time the politician is accompanied by a large delegation of dozens of people. Among them are the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Minister of Construction and Transport, and the National Security Advisor. Before the trip, Viktor Orbán stated, "I am going to ensure Hungary's energy supply for the winter and the coming year. Therefore, energy issues are expected to be key." Despite calls from Brussels and the official stance of most European countries, Budapest continues to receive energy resources from the Kremlin and has even secured from the United States a 1-year exemption from sanctions against Russian oil and gas. Among other potential topics for discussion are the purchase by a Hungarian oil company of Gazprom's stake in a Serbian company and cooperation on the Paks nuclear power plant, which was built for Hungary by Russia. In addition, Orbán is reportedly incredibly pushing the idea of a peace summit in Budapest with the participation of Trump and Putin. This is being reported by local media. Italy has extradited Ukrainian Serhiy Kuznetsov to Germany. The German investigation suspects him of involvement in the sabotage of the Nord Stream 1 and 2 gas pipelines. He is currently in the city of Karlsruhe. This is where the Federal Prosecutor's Office of Germany is located. The Ukrainian citizen will be brought before an investigating judge who will present him with an arrest warrant and decide whether to keep him in custody. In Germany, Kuznetsov is being defended by lawyers Ilona Meneke, who is of Ukrainian descent, and Valery Banze. The German defense refers to international law. The lawyers believe that the explosions on the Nord Streams bear the hallmarks of an operation by another state and that private individuals could not have carried out such sabotage on their own. Therefore, they argue that functional immunity applies to Serhiy and that Germany has no right to criminally prosecute a person who acted not on his own behalf. Serhiy himself denies any involvement in the sabotage. German prosecutors suspect Kuznetsov of being involved in the explosions on 2 gas pipelines in the Baltic Sea in September 2022. According to the investigation, he allegedly coordinated a group of people, including 4 divers, all of whom are Ukrainian citizens. Kuznetsov was detained back in August in the Italian province of Ravenna, where he was with his family. While in custody, he went on a hunger strike to protest the conditions of his detention. After the court hearing, a decision will be made regarding the continued detention of the suspect. The lawyers are gaining access to the case materials. The trial is to take place in the city of Hamburg, but this may happen in a few months. The German government does not comment on the accusations against the Ukrainian and refers to the fact that this is a matter for the investigation.
I can repeat what we have been saying for many weeks. We are aware of new information regarding the case, including from Italy. But we remind you the investigation is being conducted by the Federal Prosecutor's Office, Karl Struhe. It is ongoing, and we need to wait for the results.
The Netherlands is preparing a plan for the return of Ukrainians home after 2027. According to proposals from the Ministry of Refugee and Migration Affairs, that is when the EU Temporary Protection Directive will expire. Therefore, it is planned to grant Ukrainian displaced persons a special temporary status in order to encourage them to return to their homeland. However, the condition for such a return will be the establishment of peace. This will help avoid a situation where about 120,000 Ukrainians currently living in the Netherlands would be forced to simultaneously apply for refugee status. The authorities would not be able to cope with such a workload. Already now, the country is running out of places to accommodate Ukrainians, so Amsterdam is currently encouraging our citizens to pay for their own housing rent and health insurance. Overall, the Netherlands wants those displaced people who work and actively pay taxes, that is, who contribute to the local economy, to be able to remain and stay in their country as long as possible. What do you think about these plans? Be sure to write about it in the comments to this broadcast on YouTube. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. In the meantime, I continue with the TSN broadcast. The number of people killed in the deadly fire at a Hong Kong residential complex has risen to 128. Dozens more are still being searched for among the ruins. At least 70 people have been injured. More than 2,000 emergency workers and law enforcement officers have been involved in the special operation to extinguish the fire and search for victims. The fire broke out on Wednesday. The flames engulfed as many as 7 high-rise residential buildings at once and quickly spread from floor to floor. It was assigned the 5th, the highest level of danger. Thick, acrid smoke filled the complex, and tongues of flame shot high into the sky. In total, about 4,600 people lived in those buildings. They were evacuated and placed in temporary shelters. The exact cause of the fire is still being investigated. Meanwhile, law enforcement officials stated that the rapid spread of the fire was facilitated by the foam insulation used around the windows of the buildings and bamboo scaffolding. Because in this residential complex, they were doing facade renovations themselves. The Hong Kong authorities reported the arrest of 3 people on suspicion of involuntary manslaughter in connection with the fire. They are representatives of a construction company. The police will investigate why they used substandard and non-fire resistant materials and whether there was any corruption involved. The Hong Kong authorities promise financial compensation to those who lost their homes. A fire in a high-rise building in Ivano-Frankivsk was caused by a charging station. The fire broke out in one of the apartments on the 2nd floor. A 4-year-old child was hospitalized with a preliminary diagnosis of smoke inhalation. In total, rescuers had to evacuate about a dozen residents. The preliminary cause of the fire, according to the police, was a short circuit in the charging station, which the owners used during scheduled power outages. Experts are currently investigating exactly what happened to the charging device and why. They stole at least 1 million hryvnias from humanitarian aid intended for children. In Zaporizhzhia, 3 men suspected of fraud have been detained. Investigators say they sought out people in Zaporizhzhia to register as individual entrepreneurs and use them to conduct fictitious banking transactions. The perpetrators approached an international organization and received over 17 million hryvnias to purchase equipment, stationery, and organize events for children. The fraudsters withdrew the funds in cash from the accounts of the newly created shell companies. In this way, law enforcement says they managed to steal 1 million hryvnias of charitable funds. She saved on legal fees and won her case with the help of artificial intelligence. Alexandra Korin from Odnosipka used ChatGPT to draft a lawsuit and figure out how the electronic court system works. TSN correspondents looked into whether this was difficult and if artificial intelligence poses a threat to lawyers.
She spent nights working on it and managed to draft the lawsuit herself in a week. Alexandra explains that she decided to do without a lawyer. Her case wasn't too complicated. It was about extending the deadline for submitting an inheritance application. However, she admits it wasn't easy.
It was a tremendous amount of work, but I'm good at focusing on texts, even large volumes. So when my child went to bed, I would sit down and work on it.
It was artificial intelligence that gave the woman the idea to try a new system.
It suggested to me that I could apply through the electronic court system.
In the end, Alexandra calculated that she saved about $1,000. They only spent money on a ChatGPT subscription and the court fee. She believes that both she and her virtual assistant contributed equally to the work. However, in order to prevent artificial intelligence from making up laws that don't exist, it had to be constantly monitored.
It made mistakes and I scolded it, and sometimes we really had to sort things out between us, just the two of us, you know. It doesn't feel emotions, so it's hard to share a sense of victory with it. It's not a personality, it's just a tool you use.
It didn't work out right away, they say in court.
The first application submitted by the parties did not meet the requirements for a statement of claim at all. And for the most part, if a statement of claim is not properly or thoroughly prepared, it may be denied.
A real lawyer would not have made such a mistake, says lawyer Alexander Mukunin with confidence.
Artificial intelligence frequently makes things up. As the Ukrainian saying goes, cheap fish makes bad soup. That's what using artificial intelligence is like. For
help, the lawyer emphasizes, you should only turn to it in simple cases, otherwise the consequences can be fatal.
Artificial intelligence can be used in areas that do not concern a person's fate. Anything that concerns when there are objections from the other side, when the other side puts up resistance, artificial intelligence may simply not take this into account.
However, in Alexandra's case, everything worked out. When she corrected the mistake after the case was returned, the judge ruled in her favor. The court had no idea that this lawsuit was prepared with the help of artificial intelligence. However, they say that currently there are no restrictions regarding this.
The law does not provide any prohibition on how a statement of claim should be prepared.
Due to the cost of legal services, the court says, more and more people are refusing the services of lawyers, especially during the Great War. However, they do not expect a flood of applications generated by artificial intelligence here, and they warn, usually only those who win talk about using virtual assistants. For now, they are not able to replace real lawyers.
It's difficult for us to work with cases where statements of claim are prepared independently by people who don't understand the process.
There are so many nuances, so many details. Here, everyone decides for themselves whether they can try it on their own.
Moreover, Alexander says that some large language models are already refusing to give advice in medicine and law. And
do you use artificial intelligence? Write in the comments, and with that, I'm wrapping up this TSN broadcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss our broadcasts. And don't forget to like this video. See you at 2 p.m.